Analysis paralysis. It happens to the best of us, and in this video, I'm going to share my 3 tips to overcoming it right now. What is up, everybody? Matt Brattin here with TMBanalytics.com, your analytics career headquarters. And today, we are going to be talking about something that everybody knows and loves. And what's that? We don't love it. We don't. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about analysis paralysis. And if you're watching this wondering what that is, thing number 1, lucky you. Thing number 2, if you've ever been working on a project for a few hours or even a few days in some cases, and you start to feel like it's become some sort of an immovable object that you just can't make progress on, you might be in paralysis, my friend. Okay? But not to worry. While it may suck in the moment, it too shall pass. But in order to really combat this thing, it's important to understand what typically causes it to happen in the first place, right? Now, while I was researching this topic, I found a ton of the content out there is geared very heavily towards the psychology of the situation. And for context, TED Talks on the subject seem to be the most popular. So yeah, little old me here trying to address this feels like a lost cause to some extent, but hear me out, okay? I've dealt with my fair share, and I continue to deal with this on a regular basis, and I'm here to tell you that it never really goes away. You just acquire skills and tools that you can add to your arsenal that'll ultimately help you to overcome it more quickly and mitigate some of the damage that it can cause to you by slowing you down. So here's the deal. I've identified what I consider top 3 causes of paralysis, and I've earmarked each of these as what I consider the most common flavor that you might encounter depending on where you are in your career. So let's get started. So type number 1, and arguably the most common cause of paralysis, and most certainly the most frequent instance encountered by early career professionals: poorly defined objectives. What this means is if you've ever felt yourself smiling and nodding away while discussing a project or task or quick analysis, that should be danger sign number 1. Never ever passively listen to an assignment while it's being given. Always be an active listener and be relentless in clarifying your objectives. But Matt, sometimes I'm afraid to speak up and when I have a question because I don't want them to think I'm not getting it. First off, don't be dumb, okay? If you're not getting it, you're not getting it. And the surest way to not get it is just to keep quiet. And ultimately, you're just creating more work for everyone when you walk away, sit down at your desk, and stare at your screen for half an hour trying to figure out answers to the questions that you were just too prideful to ask in the first place. So I know this may be shocking to you, but the idea that asking clarifying questions will make you look stupid couldn't be further from the truth, okay? It's engaging. The person that's making this request will actually appreciate you taking the time to communicate back to them their request and making it crystal clear that you two are on the same page. I've actually had someone cut me off mid-sentence before just to thank me for saying the words, "I don't understand," because they were so used to people just doing the smile, nod facade and then coming back an hour later with basic questions that they should have asked up front. So you're talking about it now. You should ask your questions now. You want to go an extra step? Sketch together the indeliverable with that person and what it might look like. And if you're in agreement, now you've got your goal right there. It's tangible and you can work toward it together, okay? So ask the questions up front, get clear on the objectives, and you'll bypass so much sitting and flipping through your thoughts, trying to figure out what you're trying to accomplish and get more done, all right? Cause and tip number 2, we're on a roll here. Now we're talking more to mid-career folks, but again, this could afflict anyone. It's indiscriminate here, and this is really likely the most reasonable cause for paralysis, and it's important here to not simply be discouraged. So what is it? As you're developing in your career, you will find yourself from time to time experimenting with new techniques, learning new tools, even attacking new types of problems. Sounds great, right? Sounds like you're learning? That's exactly right. And this is a sign of growing pains that just comes disguised as analysis paralysis. So as you start questioning your methods, maybe you should just stick to what you know. Maybe you're an imposter. This is where growth is earned. And you got to trust the process here, and you know that you're going to come out the other end better than where you started. This is when you earn your stripes, and it may feel slow and painful in the moment, but if your objectives are clear, then keep pushing, okay? You're going to get there. Overcoming this, I've found, sometimes requires something as simple as just getting up, taking a 10-minute walk, or going around to pick the brain of somebody who's experienced this before. But be cautious here not to stymie your own growth by relying too much on the help of others mid-process, okay? Rather, sometimes it's better just to be, sharing with that person what you've done after the fact and doing some sort of a review. And that's going to yield better long-term results than leaning too heavily mid-process where most of the real learning is occurring. All right? We're already on number 3. All right? And my personal demon, this one comes when you just can't help yourself but to get lost in the weeds, all right? When I think of this, I think of all the entrepreneurs who get the questions, when they're successful and they're being interviewed. If you knew when you started what you know now, what would you have done differently? And one of the most common answers that I've seen is, well, I would have never started in the first place, because if I had honestly known how hard it was going to be, or, what I would have had to go through, it would have scared me away and I would have never taken the plunge. So sometimes ignorance feels like bliss, and for later career professionals who have seen a lot, they've developed a lot of deep wiring and understanding of how a lot of things work, this can absolutely work against you as you work on sometimes even just routine analytical tasks. This happens as you let your curiosity carry you too far, and the next thing you know, you're somewhere down a rabbit hole, deep, dark, fumbling around, thinking like, how on earth did I get here? Okay, look, it's hard to change that kind of wiring. In a lot of ways, you shouldn't, because it's part of what makes you a good analyst. But you have to learn to channel that superpower and learn to control it, ultimately. So my tip here is sort of a full circle back to tip number 1, where the idea was that the objectives need to be clear. You need to keep those objectives front and center. So as you get to work, you need to keep that close by so that you can continually reference and make sure that what you're doing is contributing to your end objective. Another thing I do, especially when there's a literal deliverable involved, is, I talked about building out that summary. You build the wireframe first, and then it starts to become sort of a fill in the blank exercise that'll really force you to stay focused on the prize versus exploring wildly. So look, I should caveat this too. I don't want to discourage curiosity in any way, shape, or form. It is imperative that you stay curious and you bundle appropriate findings when that comes up. But know that there's a time and a place for you to find yourself with new burning questions that might just be a little out of scope. Okay, so if you do that, you need to write those down, set them aside, and keep focused on the primary objective. You can revisit those other ones when the time is right. So that's it. My top tips for combating analysis paralysis are: number 1, to ensure that you're being proactive and clearly defining objectives. Number 2, to recognize when you're actually just learning and not necessarily stuck, so you know you need to push forward. And number 3, always keep the end goal close by so as to wrangle your thoughts when they start to venture out of scope and down a path that's just not going to help you in the moment. If you've got tactics that you've used successfully to combat analysis paralysis, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. And if you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel where I upload new videos every week on all things analytics careers. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.